Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, in a world filled with noise, distractions, and misunderstandings, one of the most vital keys to building and maintaining strong relationships, whether with family, friends, partners, or colleagues, is effective communication. And when our communication is guided not just by words, but by divine wisdom, we unlock a higher standard of love, patience, and understanding. Today, I want to share with you how we can communicate more effectively in our relationships with God's guidance at the center. Let's explore 5 powerful principles. Number 1. Listen with the heart, not just the ears. In the fast-paced world we live in, listening has become something we often do with half of our attention. We hear words, we catch phrases, but are we truly listening? More often than not, we listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. We're formulating our response while the other person is still speaking, and in doing so, we miss what they're truly trying to communicate. Listening with the heart, not just the ears, means going beyond the surface level of someone's words and tuning into the emotions, intentions, and meaning behind them. It's a kind of listening that requires presence, patience, and above all, compassion. When we listen with just our ears, we might catch the words but miss the deeper message. We might hear someone say, "I'm fine," but not sense the pain in their voice or the tension behind their smile. But when we listen with the heart, we begin to perceive things that aren't said outright. We pick up on the silent pleas for help, the longing for support, the need for reassurance. Listening with the heart is not passive. It's active, intentional, and deeply empathetic. God calls us to love one another, and part of that love involves listening in a way that makes others feel seen, valued, and understood. Love listens, it doesn't interrupt, it doesn't judge, it doesn't hurry the other person along. Love gives someone the space to be fully themselves without fear of being dismissed or minimized. And to do that, we must invite God into our hearts and ask Him to help us become better listeners. Because without His help, it's easy to fall into the trap of selfishness, of making conversations about ourselves, of rushing, of reacting without really understanding. Listening with the heart requires us to put our ego aside. It's not about being right or having the last word. It's about making the other person feel safe enough to be honest. Think about the people you trust the most in your life. Chances are, they're not the ones who always have the best advice, but the ones who make you feel heard without judgment. Those who look into your eyes when you speak, those who give you their full attention, those who nod with understanding, not out of habit, but out of genuine connection. That's the kind of listener God calls us to be. It's also important to understand that listening with the heart means being patient with people, even when they're struggling to express themselves. Sometimes emotions are tangled. Sometimes pain comes out in frustration or silence. In these moments, the heart can hear what the ears cannot. It can sense the struggle beneath the surface. It can feel the sorrow hidden behind the anger. God gives us discernment through the Holy Spirit, helping us to listen beyond words and into the soul of the person before us. When we take time to truly listen to someone, we're telling them, "You matter, your thoughts matter, your emotions matter. I am here with you, and I'm not rushing to fix you, to correct you, or to silence you. I just want to understand you." That in itself is one of the most healing things you can offer another person. And in relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, this kind of listening is the foundation of trust. But how do we develop this kind of heart-led listening? First, we start by being present. That means putting the phone down, turning off distractions, and looking someone in the eyes when they speak. Presence communicates value. Then, we ask God to still our own inner voices, the one that's trying to prepare a reply, the one that wants to defend, the one that wants to steer the conversation back to ourselves. We surrender our need to control the conversation and instead enter it with humility. It also helps to ask clarifying questions, not to challenge but to show genuine interest. Saying things like, "Can you help me understand what you mean by that?" Or "How did that make you feel?" shows the other person that you're not just hearing them, you're investing in their experience. You care enough to go deeper. Another vital element of listening with the heart is silence. Sometimes silence is uncomfortable, so we rush to fill it, but silence can be sacred. It allows the other person space to gather their thoughts, to breathe, to speak from a more honest place. In those quiet moments, God can also speak to us, giving us insight into what to say or not say, and helping us respond with wisdom. The truth is, we all long to be understood. And in every relationship, when we listen with the heart, we are building a bridge, one made not of words but of connection, empathy, and love. That bridge allows us to walk into each other's world and say, I'm here, I care, I'm not going anywhere. So, whether you're listening to a child trying to express a fear they can't quite name, a spouse sharing something vulnerable, a friend going through heartbreak, or even a stranger opening up unexpectedly, take a moment to slow down. Ask God to help you listen not just with your ears, but with your heart, because in that sacred space of genuine listening, relationships are healed, strengthened, and transformed. Number 2, speak with grace, not just truth. In our daily interactions, words hold immense power. They can uplift or tear down, comfort or wound, encourage or discourage. Speaking the truth is a noble goal, but truth without grace can often do more harm than good. It's not enough to simply be honest. We must also be kind. To speak with grace, not just truth, is to understand that how we say something is just as important as what we say. When we allow God to guide our words, He teaches us to speak with both courage and compassion, with clarity and care, with honesty that heals rather than honesty that hurts. Telling someone the truth can feel like the right thing to do, but without grace, it can come across as harsh, judgmental, or even self-righteous. Grace adds gentleness. Grace adds love. Grace adds understanding. It's the ability to see beyond the moment, beyond the mistake, beyond the flaw, and to speak in a way that invites connection rather than causes shame. When we speak with grace, we are not watering down the truth. We are wrapping it in compassion. We are delivering it in a way that the other person can actually receive, process, and grow from. God Himself models this beautifully. Throughout Scripture and in our own personal experiences, we see that He speaks truth, but always in love. He corrects but does not condemn. He guides but never shames. His words carry weight, yet they never crush the spirit. When we let Him lead our conversations, our tone changes, our motives shift. We stop speaking just to be right or to prove a point, and we start speaking to bring healing, understanding, and peace. There are times when telling the truth may feel difficult, when we need to confront someone, express disappointment, or highlight a mistake. In those moments, it's easy to let frustration, anger, or pride take over. But speaking with grace means pausing first. It means taking a breath, asking God for wisdom, and considering how our words will land on the heart of the other person. Are we building them up or breaking them down? Are we encouraging growth or sowing resentment? Are we speaking from love or from ego? One of the most common ways we hurt others unintentionally is through the truth spoken without timing, without tenderness, and without tact. For example, offering criticism in the middle of someone's vulnerable moment can deepen their pain instead of helping them grow, or correcting someone publicly instead of privately and gently can humiliate rather than guide. Grace reminds us that timing and tone matter. It's not about avoiding hard truths. It's about delivering them with honor and respect. When someone opens up to us, especially about something painful or personal, they're not just looking for raw honesty. They're looking for safety. They want to know that they can be real without being ridiculed. They want to know that even if they've made a mistake, they're not beyond forgiveness, understanding, or second chances. Speaking with grace creates that safety. It tells the other person, I see you, I hear you, I care enough to be honest, but I also care enough to be kind. Grace also helps us check our motives before we speak. Are we sharing truth to help someone grow, or are we speaking out of irritation or superiority? Are we correcting them to genuinely support their betterment, or are we feeding our own need to feel right? Grace humbles us. It teaches us to speak truth not as a weapon, but as a gift. And like any gift, it should be given with love, not arrogance. It's worth remembering that every person we talk to is carrying something. Everyone is fighting a battle we may not see. When we speak with grace, we acknowledge their humanity. We recognize their dignity, even when they've fallen short. We remind them, and ourselves, that people are more important than points, that relationships matter more than arguments, and that kindness is never a weakness. Speaking with grace also means being willing to listen. Sometimes the most graceful thing you can say is nothing at all. Sometimes holding space for someone, letting them speak, and responding with empathy is far more powerful than offering unsolicited advice or blunt truths. Grace listens, absorbs, and then responds thoughtfully. And finally, speaking with grace requires prayer. It requires asking God to guard our tongues, to soften our hearts, and to help us see others as He sees them. When we spend time with Him, we begin to reflect Him. Our words become gentler, more purposeful, more filled with light. Even in difficult conversations, we begin to speak from a place of peace instead of tension. In every relationship, whether with a spouse, a friend, a child, a coworker, or even a stranger, we are given opportunities daily to speak life or to speak harm. The truth is important, but when delivered without grace, it can turn people away rather than draw them closer. So let us strive to be people who speak truth, yes, but who do it with humility, love, and gentleness. Let us speak with grace, because grace makes truth easier to hear and far more powerful to receive. Number 3, choose peace over pride. In our relationships, both personal and professional, we are often faced with moments where tension rises, emotions flare, and disagreements occur. In those moments, we're given a choice, a deeply human, often difficult choice. Do we respond from a place of pride, defending ourselves, trying to prove we're right? Or do we choose peace, even if it means being the one to step down, apologize first, or let go of the need to win? Pride tells us to protect our ego, but peace calls us to protect the relationship. And when we allow God to guide our response, we begin to see that choosing peace over pride is not weakness. It is strength, maturity, and spiritual wisdom in action. Pride is one of the most subtle yet destructive forces in communication. It doesn't always show up as arrogance or loud declarations. Sometimes it's the silent refusal to say sorry. It's the cold shoulder we give someone because we feel they should make the first move. It's the refusal to admit we were wrong or misunderstood. Pride makes everything about the self. It whispers you don't need to apologize or they don't deserve your kindness. But those whispers only build walls between hearts. Over time, those walls become barriers to trust, love, and connection. Peace, on the other hand, requires humility. It requires stepping back and asking, what matters more, being right or being in right relationship? It's the willingness to listen instead of argue, to understand rather than attack, to de-escalate rather than prove a point. Peace doesn't mean we always agree with others, but it means we value the person more than the disagreement. It means choosing unity over division, harmony over hostility. And that's a choice that often requires God's help, because human nature leans toward pride. Left to our own emotions, we want to fight back, to justify, to win. But when we invite God into the conversation, He softens our hearts. He gives us the courage to say, I'm sorry, I understand, or let's move forward. Choosing peace doesn't mean becoming a doormat or suppressing your own needs. It doesn't mean avoiding important conversations or pretending everything is fine when it's not. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict with grace, respect, and love. It's the strength to speak honestly but calmly, to set boundaries without being cruel, to express frustration without attacking someone's character. True peace doesn't avoid the storm, it brings calm into it. One of the most powerful demonstrations of choosing peace over pride is the ability to forgive. Pride clings to resentment. It replays the offense over and over, waiting for the other person to come crawling back. Peace, however, is willing to release the pain, even without an apology. It understands that holding onto anger only poisons the soul. Forgiveness is one of the greatest forms of choosing peace, and it requires deep strength and faith. It says, you may have hurt me, but I won't let that hurt define our relationship or steal my inner peace. In moments of disagreement, it can be helpful to pause and ask yourself, what would this look like if I responded with peace instead of pride? Would the conversation shift? Would the tension dissolve? Would healing begin sooner? Often, the answer is yes. When one person takes the first step toward peace, it creates space for the other to do the same. It's like lowering the temperature in a heated room. Suddenly, everything becomes a little more breathable. God deeply values peace. He calls us to be peacemakers, not peacekeepers. A peacekeeper avoids problems to maintain surface-level calm, but a peacemaker enters difficult spaces and brings healing. That requires sacrifice. It means setting aside our desire to be seen as right, strong, or superior. It means asking God to help us see the other person with compassion, even when we feel hurt or misunderstood. It means putting love above ego, grace above offense. Relationships flourish when peace is prioritized. In marriages, families, friendships, and communities, peace creates an atmosphere where people feel safe, heard, and valued. But peace doesn't happen by accident. It is a choice, and often a hard one. It takes intention. It takes prayer. It takes letting go of the need to have the last word or the final say. It takes trusting that God sees our efforts, even if others do not acknowledge them. There is a quiet power in being the one who diffuses tension, who speaks softly when others are loud, who apologizes first, who forgives quickly, who lets go when pride wants to hold on. That power comes from God. It's the power to restore relationships, to break cycles of conflict, and to build bridges where pride had once built walls. So when the moment comes, when you feel that tension rising, when your pride is urging you to fight back, to prove, to defend, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself what choosing peace would look like. And then, with God's help, take the path that leads not just to silence, but to understanding. Not just to an end of the argument, but to the healing of the heart. Because in the end, peace leaves behind something far greater than pride ever could. It leaves behind connection, respect, and love that lasts. Number 4. Be slow to anger, quick to understand. In the heat of the moment, when emotions are high and words are flying fast, it's easy to let anger take control. We've all been there. Someone says something that offends us, misunderstands us, or treats us unfairly, and before we know it, anger rises within us like a wave. Our pulse quickens, our tone sharpens, and our words become weapons. But in those moments, we are given a choice: to react in anger or to pause, breathe, and try to understand. Being slow to anger and quick to understand is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of emotional maturity, wisdom, and strength guided by self-control and divine grace. Anger in itself is not always wrong. It's a natural human emotion, and there are moments when it's even justified. But what matters is how we handle that anger. Do we allow it to dictate our actions, or do we master it before it masters us? When we respond in anger without reflection, we often damage the very relationships we're trying to protect. Harsh words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. The emotional wounds we cause in our quick temper may heal, but the scars remain. That's why choosing to be slow to anger matters. It gives us space to respond with wisdom instead of regret. When we take a moment to slow down, we allow ourselves the time to ask important questions. Why am I feeling this way? What is the real issue? Am I reacting to the present situation or carrying baggage from something else? What might the other person be going through? These questions lead us to understanding, and understanding is the foundation of effective communication and healthy relationships. Being quick to understand means making an intentional effort to see things from the other person's point of view. It's about listening beyond the words being said and paying attention to the emotions behind them. Maybe someone lashed out because they're hurt, not because they hate you. Maybe someone was short with you because they're dealing with something heavy internally. When we pause to consider the other person's feelings, struggles, and fears, we shift from judgment to compassion. And compassion has the power to change everything. God's guidance plays a crucial role in helping us develop this kind of emotional discipline. Without Him, it's easy to let pride or ego lead the way. But when we invite God into our hearts, He teaches us to pause, to reflect, and to act in love rather than impulse. He helps us recognize that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every offense deserves a reaction. He reminds us that gentleness can be more powerful than shouting, and patience more effective than punishment. One of the most powerful things we can offer in a heated moment is a calm presence. Instead of matching the other person's anger, we can lower our voice, slow our breathing, and respond with care. This kind of response often diffuses tension and invites the other person to do the same. It turns confrontation into conversation. It transforms conflict into an opportunity for growth, and more often than not, it leads to resolution rather than regret. Being slow to anger also means letting go of the need to control everything. Sometimes people will disappoint us, hurt us, or fall short of our expectations. But holding on to that anger only poisons our own hearts. Forgiveness, even when difficult, brings peace. It doesn't mean excusing poor behavior, but it means choosing to release the grip of bitterness. Anger left unchecked hardens the heart. Understanding softens it, opening the door for healing, restoration, and deeper connection. It also helps to remember that many conflicts are rooted in miscommunication. What someone meant to say and how we heard it can be two very different things. That's why it's so important to clarify before reacting. Asking simple questions like, "Did you mean it this way?" Or "Can you help me understand what you were trying to say?" can save a conversation from spiraling into unnecessary conflict. These moments of clarification show maturity and a genuine desire to understand rather than assume. In relationships, especially those closest to us, anger can create distance while understanding draws us closer. Being quick to understand doesn't mean we ignore wrong behavior or avoid difficult topics. It means we approach them with grace and a willingness to listen. It means we believe the best about the other person until we have reason not to. It means we prioritize connection over control. With God's help, we can cultivate the strength to pause before we speak, the humility to seek understanding before passing judgment, and the patience to respond in love even when it's hard. This kind of emotional discipline doesn't develop overnight. It's a daily choice. But every time we choose it, we grow. We become safer people to talk to. We become better friends, spouses, siblings, and leaders. So the next time your anger begins to rise, remember this. Take a breath, pause, ask God to guide your response. Try to understand before you explode, because in that quiet moment of self-control, you protect what matters most, your peace, your character, and your relationships. And that choice, made consistently, will shape not just how others experience you, but the person you are becoming. Number 5. Invite God into every conversation. In the rush of our daily lives, it's easy to approach conversations based solely on emotion, impulse, or habit. We speak out of frustration, react without thinking, or try to solve things in our own limited strength. But when we pause and intentionally invite God into every conversation, everything changes. Our words gain purpose. Our tone softens. Our hearts become more open to understanding. God's presence brings clarity where there's confusion, peace where there's tension, and wisdom where there's uncertainty. Whether the conversation is lighthearted or deeply emotional, God wants to be part of it. And when we let Him in, our communication becomes a tool for healing, growth, and deeper connection. Inviting God into a conversation doesn't mean every word spoken is overly formal or spiritual. It means silently aligning your heart with His before you speak. It's saying in your spirit, "God, help me say the right thing. Help me listen with love. Help me be slow to speak, slow to anger, and quick to understand." When that becomes your starting point, your approach shifts. You're no longer driven by ego, fear, or the desire to win an argument. You're motivated by love, guided by patience, and led by divine peace. Often, we underestimate the spiritual weight of our words. A single sentence can plant a seed of hope or cause lasting hurt. That's why we need divine help, not just in big life decisions, but even in ordinary conversations. God sees what we don't. He knows the silent battles others are facing. He understands the emotional weight behind their words. And when we invite him into our communication, he helps us speak not only to people's minds but to their hearts. There are moments when we don't know what to say, when a loved one is grieving, when conflict arises, or when tension fills the room. In those moments, instead of rushing to fix things or offering hollow advice, we can stop and ask God to take the lead. He can give us the right words, or sometimes the wisdom to remain silent. He reminds us that listening can be more powerful than talking, and that presence can speak louder than answers. In conflict, especially, inviting God into the conversation is essential. When emotions are high, our natural instinct is to defend, retaliate, or shut down, but God teaches us to respond in love. He reminds us that the goal of any difficult conversation is not to win, but to understand and restore. His presence helps us keep our focus on what truly matters, the relationship. When he is part of the exchange, we are more likely to seek reconciliation over being right, peace over pride, and empathy over judgment. Even in joyful or casual conversations, God's presence can make a difference. He helps us be more mindful of the needs of others, more intentional in our encouragement, more present in our listening. A simple chat with a friend can become a source of inspiration. A word of encouragement spoken at the right time can lift someone out of despair. When we're connected to God, we begin to see every conversation as an opportunity, not just to speak, but to serve, support, and bless. Prayer doesn't have to be loud or visible to be powerful. Sometimes it's just a quiet whisper before you pick up the phone, a silent prayer before a difficult meeting, or a quick breath asking for wisdom before responding to someone's pain. That moment of spiritual pause is often what makes the difference between a conversation that brings clarity and one that creates conflict. It's also important to recognize that inviting God into a conversation means being willing to surrender our own desire for control. We have to be open to what he wants to say through us, even if it challenges us to be more patient, more humble, or more honest than we planned. Sometimes God will lead us to apologize first. Other times, he'll nudge us to speak up when we'd rather avoid the issue. In both cases, his guidance leads us toward deeper truth, stronger relationships, and lasting peace. Inviting God into every conversation also transforms the way we listen. We begin to listen not just for information, but for understanding. We stop assuming and start asking questions. We stop interrupting and start paying attention. God teaches us to listen with compassion, to hear the emotion behind the words, the heart behind the pain, and the unspoken needs behind the silence. In every relationship, whether it's with a spouse, a parent, a friend, a coworker, or a stranger, God longs to bring his wisdom, love, and healing, but he waits for an invitation. He never forces his way in. The moment we open the door and ask him to guide our words, he begins to work in ways we can't always see. He softens hearts, opens minds, and builds bridges where walls once stood. So before you speak, pause. Before you react, pray. Before you assume, ask. And in every conversation, no matter how small, invite God in. Let him guide your tone, your timing, your words, and your silence. Because when God is part of your communication, your relationships won't just survive, they'll thrive. Words, when guided by his Spirit, have the power to heal wounds, restore trust, and bring light into even the darkest places. And that's the kind of conversation the world needs more of. In closing, let us remember, communication is not just a skill, it's a sacred tool. When guided by God, it transforms our relationships into safe spaces, our homes into havens, and our hearts into instruments of peace. Let's not just talk to be heard. Let's communicate to connect, to heal, and to grow, with God lighting the way. God bless you.